What is cinematic look? What are the characteristics that actually make a video cinematic?
Okay, everybody, positions. Roll sound. Roll camera. Action.
Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're gonna talk about...
It feels like these days, specifically, there's like so many things online with characteristics of being cinematic. Like there's new lenses, new cameras, and a lot of time when everybody's reviewing those, they talk about how these things are cinematic. There's a new iPhone. Does it shoot cinematic video? And so on. And it feels like this term is actually kind of being abused a little bit because people are just kind of attaching it everywhere, labeling anything that they like as being cinematic. But not everything that you like, not every look of the video that you like is actually cinematic. So what does make a video cinematic? Now let's talk first about the term itself. What does cinematic actually mean? Now in the old days you basically had two types of video. There was the TV, which in those times were in more like a squarish 2x3, 3x4 format. And then you had the cinematic films, which were being displayed in cinemas. And the cinematic look basically means that you are able to produce a footage, a video, that looks like it's from a film. Now, nowadays, there isn't that big of a difference between, like stuff that you see on your TV, your streaming, and, like movies that you go watch in the cinema. Mainly, there's a difference in the quality of equipment that you have to watch that movie, for example, but you can have a really good television and you might not even notice a difference between, watching at home and watching in a theater if you have really good equipment. So anything these days can be cinematic. But is everything cinematic? Now these things can be debatable. There can be a few very subjective, truths as to what actually makes a video cinematic. But I think there are a few characteristics that are non-negotiable and they have to be filled out in order for something to qualify as being cinematic. So I've come up with a few points that I believe really make any video cinematic, regardless of the choice of the final color grade, because that really is an artistic choice of anybody who's making it. Like, for example, you can't compare Lord of the Rings to Harry Potter to the movie 300 to the Grand Budapest Hotel. All these movies have different looks, different styles, but the following things are the same through all these movies and TV shows and anything that you watch and is cinematic. Okay, so the first thing that makes a video cinematic is the choice of lenses in a certain situation. Specifically, when you are filming a close-up shot of your subject. Now, you can watch basically any TV show and any film, and whenever you have a close-up shot of the character where you have to focus on what your character is doing, when your character is speaking, you will always see that there's a lot of depth of field behind the character, meaning that there's a lot of blurred out area behind your subject. As same as, using shallow depth of field for close-up shots. When you have a wide shot of a situation, in a cinematic video, you always shoot on higher f-stop, meaning that everything you see is in focus. The point of these two combinations is that whenever you have a close-up shot, you want the viewer to focus on, for example, the character that is speaking or doing something else. And whenever you have a wide shot, its purpose is to establish the scene, to give your viewer knowledge of where the scene is taking place, what is happening, what the location is like, what the weather is like, anything surrounding that. That's the point. And if you combine just these two things, then your video is going towards being cinematic. The second most important thing here is the lighting itself. Now I have to put out a disclaimer. You can't really define lighting style that's gonna make your video look cinematic. By that I mean there are different artistic choices on how to light a scene in whatever you're doing. Like Game of Thrones was lit very heavily when it was shot in the studio, and whenever they were shooting outside, they just used natural light, or maybe they just used, you know, like a few key lights. They didn't light up the entire background and everything, because sometimes you don't need that. You can still just use natural lighting without any artificial lighting, and you can get cinematic footage. But there are two things again that you need to take into consideration that appear through all cinematic works. Now, the first cinematic characteristics of lighting is how you use the dark side of the character. Now, you can basically watch almost any film, almost any TV show, and you're gonna see that whenever you're looking at a close-up shot of a character, the camera is always shooting the character's dark side of the face. It means that if this is your subject and your light is here, the camera is going to be shooting from this side of your character into the shadowy part of the character's face. Now, this is because that gives your character depth. It makes it look more dramatic. It doesn't matter if, you know, this is sun and not artificial light. If whenever you're shooting, you know, shadowy part of the face, your character gains depth and is being separated from the background, meaning that the background has color, has something happening, and your character is here, makes everything look more dramatic. Now, you can watch almost any show, any TV show. I'm not gonna say all of them because I'm pretty sure somebody broke this rule at some point, but go watch your favorite show, and what you'll see that most of the time that's true. Whenever you're shooting a character, you're always showing the dark side. You never show the bright side, because that makes your character look flat. And again, you can do that with natural lighting, you can do it with artificial lighting. You just have to position yourself on another side of the character's, you know, center than your light sources. Even if that is the sun, if it's a light, whatever. Just if you want to shoot narrative stuff and if you want to make it shoot cinematic, shoot dark side. Even like for documentaries and stuff, you know. YouTube stuff is a little bit different, because when you are shooting yourself and you are talking to a camera, it's a little bit different. But if this were a documentary thing and I would be looking at, you know, somebody speaking to me, the camera would be on this side, shooting at my face. The second thing when it comes to lighting is that you always need to use help with light to separate your character from your background. Like if you are in a busy room, you want the audience to focus on your character. Now, like a very easy example with this is this, for example, this classic YouTube setup. You've got your main character, which is lit, and then you've got some lights in the background, but that's just to kind of like give you some depth, that there's more happening in the background and that your character kind of stands out. It can be anything. It can be a candle, just whatever light you find. It can even be natural lighting, like a window or just a sun. Whatever it is, just, you know, position your shot when you're setting up in a way that you get your character's dark side and that you get some sort of light in the background, or just put something in the background, a candle, a light, whatever. Because this way, the image is not what we say flat, but it gains depth. First, your character itself gains depth by shooting its dark side, and then it's being separated from your background. The third thing that makes a video cinematic is the movement of the camera. You know, these three things kind of go together, you know, the camera, the light, and the movement of the camera. Now, when it comes to movement, there aren't that specific rules like we had for camera and for light, but there's basically just kind of like one very strongly opinionated guideline. You know, your camera's movement must complement the action it's shooting. What does that mean? You can have handheld camera movement and it can be cinematic. You can have it on a gimbal, it can be cinematic. You can have it on a drone, rigged to a car, on a Steadicam. You know, you can drop it from a building for whatever, you know, reason. Whatever you do, it can be cinematic, but it's got to support the action it's doing. And the best way to think about this is just, how would you react as a human being in a certain situation? So for example, in a fight, you wouldn't glide around very smoothly as people are fighting around you, but you would be, you know, shaking and jumping and moving around and just being all confused. And if you do that with the camera, it feels more natural when somebody's watching it, because this is what you would feel if you were in that situation for real. This is how you would react. This is how your eyes would move, basically. So the camera is your viewer's eyes. So what you need to do is you need to mimic the movement that a person would have, like in real life. In certain situations, that's not really exactly how it would be, maybe, but you kind of get my point. So use handheld whenever is appropriate. So fight scenes, yes. Bride walking down the aisle, not really, because if you're at a wedding and you're standing there and you're watching a bride going down, it's a smooth shot because your eyes are also doing this smooth, oh, there's the bride. So it's not like, you know, it doesn't make sense. If you're sitting in a park looking at the sunset, or just sitting on the beach just looking out in the open ocean, if you were to do that and you were just sitting on a bench just taking it easy, it would be a smooth shot. So you can just, you know, set your camera down, just have a static shot. Now, when you're talking to somebody or when you watch a review about can a certain piece of gear be cinematic, I think the more appropriate question is, can this piece of gear, this lens, this gimbal, this camera help you achieve a cinematic look? And if with that gear you can achieve these things, then yes, it can be cinematic. But by itself, a camera is not cinematic. And I really do want to specify this because just the color look, or just, you know, like the final look of the image, colors wise, doesn't make your footage cinematic. That is just your personal opinion of what looks cinematic to you. But you might like Lord of the Rings and you might not like the look in the 300 movie, or you might like, I don't know, the Grand Budapest Hotel like I mentioned, and you might not like Marvel stuff. So the choice of color, the look of the colors, does not define cinematic look. This is more of a personal preference that you might have or somebody else might have, but these other things are what make footage cinematic. This is what more of a, let's say, an experience of the video is, not the look of it, if that kind of makes sense. So let me know in the comments down below if you feel like there's something else that I've missed, or if you disagree with me, or if you think that there's something else that should be on this list and might be more important to making things cinematic. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the future. Ciao.